Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and on tonight's show, the Pittsburgh Steelers just got some great news at the NFL Honors last night. Then we'll get into Anthony Richardson. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers consider trading for him and then having him sit for a year behind Aaron Rodgers? Then we'll get into Patrick Queen, where he just put a hint out on social media that he will eventually be leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. We'll make sure to let you guys know what that's all about at the end of today's show. But make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon to kick off today's show, because we are officially into Super Bowl weekend, my friends, and this is the weekend that obviously all football fans, love and, can't wait for every single year. It's going to be a great matchup between the Seahawks and Patriots this year. I can't wait for it, guys. If you share my enthusiasm and you want to help out the show today, click that thumbs up icon for our Super Bowl vibe check. All right, so last night, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams won NFL MVP for the 2025-2026 NFL campaign at 37 years old. And why that is great news for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their fans is that it shows that a non-mobile NFL quarterback can still ball out when and if they get the proper supporting cast around them. In fact, Matthew Stafford won the Most Valuable Player award with just one rushing yard on the year. That is over 60 rushing yards less than Aaron Rodgers, apparently the person that's not mobile enough to be a good starting quarterback in the National Football League anymore. And if you guys think about it, when you talk about passers like Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, non-mobile pocket passers need a great supporting cast around them of receivers that can separate versus man coverage, and then also a really good offensive play caller to get the most out of those weapons and put those guys in positions to get open, because they have to win from within structure. They don't have the speed and the off-schedule playmaking ability to get outside the pocket and make plays with both their arm out of structure in scramble drill, but also with their legs as rushers. You have to be able to win from within the pocket, win from within structure, and plain and simply, guys, the truth of the matter is in 2025, Aaron Rodgers wasn't provided those same weapons and that same supporting cast that somebody like Matthew Stafford was awarded there in L.A. with Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. He had a great O-line, a really good run game. He had Sean McVay, one of, if not the best play caller in football, calling his plays. And then you get Aaron Rodgers, who had this as his wide receiver room. I mean, it's nice to have DK Metcalf, but when he's getting double-teamed all the time because the rest of his wide receiver core looks like Calvin Austin III, Roman Wilson, Adam Thielen, and MVS, none of which could surpass 380 yards receiving on the season, it can be a little bit difficult for a non-mobile pocket passer to have high levels of production and efficiency during the course of an NFL season, especially when he's got a play caller that for some reason prioritizes playing Jonnu Smith more than anybody else in the tight end room, including Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. Now, to be fair, Darnell got injured, and that's why he's third in the pecking order here. But I digress. Jonnu Smith should not, under any circumstances, be getting the most snaps in your tight end room, and that lack of personnel management, I think, was part of the issue here in Pittsburgh. But no, let's just completely blame Aaron Rodgers for everything, okay? And, despite, the poor personnel management, despite the front office not providing him a legitimate wide receiver duo, let alone a trio, they still finished the season with a 10-7 record. That was the first division championship for the Pittsburgh Steelers in a half decade. Also, they were first in yards after the catch average with 4.3 yards after the catch average. That was the most among any team in the National Football League this year. That's because Rodgers was putting guys like Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, Darnell Washington, DK Metcalf in positions to run after the catch instead of throwing the ball down the field all the time, because nobody was open down the field all the time. And they also finished 15th in scoring offense with over 23 points per game, all right? They were around league average in EPA per play and success rate as well. All of that despite having maybe the worst wide receiver room in the National Football League. And, Pittsburgh is already taking action to fix that lack of supporting cast that surrounded Aaron Rodgers last year. They just replaced Mike Tomlin, who stepped down from the team, but nonetheless, they have replaced him with a head coach in Mike McCarthy, who is known for getting the most out of his offensive personnel. 2 out of his 5 years in Dallas, he had the number 1 scoring offense in the National Football League and turned Dak Prescott from a middling starting quarterback to one of the top 10 passers in the National Football League, and got the most out of guys like CeeDee Lamb, for example, and Dalton Schultz and others, okay? Brandon Cooks later in his career. So I think that Mike McCarthy certainly is the type of offensive mind that can focus on putting the right pieces around Aaron Rodgers and then getting the most out of those weapons. And now Omar Khan and the front office need to do what they didn't do the last 2 years and provide their quarterback a legitimate wide receiver room. I mean, like, everybody blames Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers for the offensive struggles or the lack of consistency or the mediocrity, whatever you want to call it, on offense the last 2 years. But, like, what did you expect those quarterbacks to do with the wide receiver rooms that they were given? You got to have at least 2, but a lot of times 3 good wide receivers in your starting lineup, or you're not going to be up to snuff in the National Football League. There's just no two ways about it, especially if you've got a non-mobile pocket passer like Aaron Rodgers that has to win from within structure. So if you guys think about it, like, Pittsburgh had a top 15, that is an above league average scoring offense last year with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, with a bottom 3 to maybe even the worst wide receiver room in the National Football League. Is it really that crazy to think that if Omar Khan gets Aaron Rodgers 2 more legitimate weapons to pair with DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, if they bring him back, that this team could get into the top 10 with Aaron Rodgers? I really don't think it's that crazy. And when you do look at the numbers between Tom Brady and his final season in 2019, where he had no receiver help, in his final season in the Patriots, going to 2020, where he gets lined up with Bruce Arians and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, wins the Super Bowl in 2020, and the numbers just completely jump. I think we could see a similar jump from Aaron Rodgers if this Steelers front office does a good job at surrounding him with the proper talent. And guess what? Matthew Stafford just proved that a non-mobile quarterback that is in the later stages of his career can play really, really well, despite not being able to move around all that great. So true or false? Let me know down there in the comment section. Aaron Rodgers is Pittsburgh's best short-term QB option. Does Aaron Rodgers give this Steelers team the best possible chance at winning a championship in 2026? Give me a T for true or type F for false. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about our sponsor today, give me a T for true or F for false. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And the big game in Santa Clara between the Seahawks and Patriots is almost here, guys. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next year. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. This week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live on the Prize Picks app right now. Drake May just needs 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So now we shift from QB1 to a potential QB2 option for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. As let's talk about the possibility of the Steelers maybe going out and making a trade and trading one of their mid-round draft picks, which they have many of this year, to trade for Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson and have him sit for a year behind Aaron Rodgers during the 2026 NFL season. And honestly, guys, I think that this could be a pretty smart plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers if they want to do this offseason. It's kind of similar to the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields strategy that they implemented 2 years ago, only I think this one is a little bit smarter. Anthony Richardson is still a very young quarterback, guys, just 24 years old. And if he sits a year, he'll be 25 when he takes the reins as the Steelers starting quarterback. That's still a really young quarterback. That's as old as Tyler Shuck was last year as a rookie for the New Orleans Saints. And Richardson, there's just no two bones about it here, guys. Like, he's one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks on the planet. Like, people at his size, 6'4", 244 pounds, should not be able to throw the ball and then also run with the ball the way that Richardson can. He's so fast. He's got one of the strongest arms on the planet, maybe the strongest for an NFL quarterback. And, you know, he likely wants out of Indianapolis this season. I think the Colts are probably going to bring back Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback. And my guess is Anthony Richardson doesn't want to play second fiddle there in Indianapolis, whereas he might want a new opportunity, even if it means he's a backup somewhere else where he could potentially be the future option at quarterback for that team. And, my take on the situation, guys, is that Richardson could really use a year where he can just sit and develop and practice and not have to worry about playing in games or anything like that, and learning from Aaron Rodgers for a year could be the best thing for him. I mean, Rodgers is known as one of the best QB mentors in the league. Just ask Will Howard, Zach Wilson, Jordan Love. They all rave about how good Aaron Rodgers is with them, teaching them the game, all that different stuff, and providing insight into the position so that, when Richardson's year of learning under Rodgers is over, he could then be ready at age 25. Again, that is such a young age, guys, to step in as the new starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2027. And you're talking about somebody with the upside to be of the caliber of somebody like Drake May or Trevor Lawrence or, Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or any of these guys that we have to deal with in this division. If Anthony Richardson hits his upside, we could have the next super weapon at quarterback, and giving Richardson a year with no pressure to play or anything like that, just learning and developing underneath Aaron Rodgers, while the Steelers still have their best option for 2026 in Rodgers leading the way. That just seems like a really smooth passing of the torch kind of situation there. And also, I don't think a trade for Richardson would be that expensive for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it would cost somewhere around a 4th-round pick. Now, maybe like your final 3rd-round pick at the very most there, but I would offer pick 135 in exchange for Richardson. You kind of give him the Justin Fields treatment there, where he's expected to be the backup to a veteran quarterback for a year, and then when he's age 25 and Rodgers assumingly retires at the end of the 2026 season, it's now Richardson's turn to step in, and voila, you've got a top 5 pick, quarterback that's got incredible upside, that has spent a year learning under Aaron Rodgers and has some NFL experience to boot. I think that there's a lot worse strategies that the Steelers could do to try and find their long-term solution at the quarterback position. But here's kind of the thing that would make the situation a little bit wonky here in Pittsburgh, is that Richardson's contract situation is a bit weird, and it's going to be a little bit weird and awkward to maneuver if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers if you trade for him. And the reason for that is he's got one more year left on his rookie deal and then a 5th-year option. The same exact deal as the Justin Fields sort of situation, where he's a 1st-round pick, so he's got that 5th-year option. The Steelers ended up declining that 5th-year option, and then he was a free agent, and he obviously left. Now, the question would be, do the Steelers pick up that 5th-year option? And if you're going to be sitting him for a year, there's no real reason why they wouldn't pick up the 5th-year option, right? But if that's the case, and he does sit for a year and he doesn't get any playing time in 2026, and it is Rodgers' job throughout the course of the 2026 campaign, that means that if Richardson takes over in 2027, like the trade would assume here, that means that he would be taking over the job in a contract year, and we all know that the Pittsburgh Steelers don't dish out extensions during the season. So essentially, you're risking him leaving in free agency the following offseason if you don't extend him before he's even played a single down as the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback. So that is a little bit awkward, but I do think that they would go into that final season on that 5th-year option, and they would just say, hey, if you play great, we have no problem giving you all the money in the world to be our starting quarterback, and if you reach your potential, all that different stuff. But hey, if he doesn't work out, he can just walk, and the Steelers don't have to take on any dead money or anything like that. They can just wipe their hands clean, and then they can try to address the quarterback position again during the 2028 offseason. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Do you think this would be a good plan? The Steelers have multiple 4th-round picks. Do you trade one of them away for Anthony Richardson to have him sit and learn behind Aaron Rodgers for a year? Type A for accept or D for decline. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. And now the last thing that I want to talk about today, guys, is Patrick Queen, where he posted a cryptic post on his Instagram today that indicates that he's likely going to be leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. He posted this on his IG story today, saying, sometimes growth requires new company, new locations, and new mindset. So that definitely indicates that he might be thinking about leaving Pittsburgh, and obviously it's not really his choice. He's under contract, but certainly there's been rumors out there that the Steelers are planning on cutting Patrick Queen this offseason. In fact, James Harrison kind of let it slip on his podcast. He said, quote, they already let Queen go, unquote. So it seems like Harrison might have a little bit of inside information that's not been made public yet, or maybe, Debo is just, mistaken or something like that. But I do think Patrick Queen is probably a goner, guys. Okay, I think it makes sense from a financial standpoint that we'll talk about here in a second. But for somebody that's making as much money as he's making, okay, and remember, when he signed with the Steelers, he was an all-pro linebacker, and he got paid like one. And especially this past season, he just didn't play like one. I mean, a 20.4% missed tackle rate was the 8th worst among linebackers in the NFL last year. That is an astronomical number. He would consistently be in the wrong run fit. He would be exploited in zone coverage when he was in pass defense. And, it's not that PFF grading is gospel, but man, when you're rating, not even in the top 70 of linebackers at your position there, like that is just not a good season from Patrick Queen. There's just no way to slice it. You could make the excuse that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin didn't put him in the right positions to succeed. I think you can make that case. But for somebody as expensive as Queenie is, his cap hit's going to be very large. And, Pittsburgh's looking at his situation right now, and they're probably thinking, hey, we can save an extra $13.3 million against the cap if we cut this guy and move on to somebody else at this position. But if that's the case, and they do move on from PQ, and it does seem like that's the plan right now, how do you go about replacing him? Do you go into free agency once again and try your luck at finding somebody that's a veteran, or do you go into the NFL draft to draft one of these younger guys and hope that they're ready to play linebacker in the National Football League on day one? Because you look at the current rotation, Peyton Wilson was essentially benched during the season because he wasn't a good enough run defender, and then Malik Harrison's a pretty good run defender, and he's a hard hitter, but he can't defend the pass. He's terrible in zone coverage. He doesn't have the chops to hold up in man coverage either. Like Patrick Queen, for his faults, he was definitely the most well-rounded linebacker on the Steelers roster last year, and we're just going to have to see what happens here because Cole Holcomb is leaving in free agency, and if you let go of Queen, you'd be asking a lot of Peyton Wilson to turn into a completely different type of player that he's been his first 2 years in the league and lead this group heading into 2026. So let's take a look at some of the top options on the linebacker market for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's actually a pretty good linebacker market in free agency. Devin Lloyd, still only 27 years old. You're going to have to pay up for him. Pretty much pay him pretty much what Patrick Queen is making right now. If you want to bring Devin Lloyd in, there's going to be a number of teams interested in him, so you'd have to win a bidding battle there. Also, Devin Bush, I don't know if there's a lot of Steelers fans that would want Devin Bush back, but he's played a lot better over the last several years in Cleveland. Nakobe Dean, another undersized guy. I don't think he's an every down guy, so I don't think the Steelers would really consider him. Leo Chanel is somebody that they could look at. He's more of an every down type of linebacker, but he's just, he's nothing special. And then the same thing goes for Alex Anzalone, who's getting up there in age, by the way. He's 31 years old. So, you look at the veteran options, and it's either very expensive or, definitely questionable. And then you get to the, draft prospects, and you could spend an early draft pick on a linebacker to start right away. You could spend your first pick in round one on a linebacker in Sonny Styles, athletic freak, all that different stuff. He's got the physical tools to play in the NFL right away. I think C.J. Allen is a starting linebacker in this league right away. I think that you could maybe get him in round two just because of the positional value. By the way, the ranks you're seeing on screen is where they rank on the consensus big board right now. Anthony Hill Jr., another great athlete out of Texas. Jake Goldie, another athletic freak out of Cincinnati. And then Jacob Rodriguez, fantastic season for the Red Raiders this year. Patrick Mahomes and others were advocating for him to be a Heisman finalist. So, I look at a guy like Rodriguez as somebody that could definitely step in on day one with the Pittsburgh Steelers and help out this team. But you guys make the call for me down there in the comment section. Is it a smart move to let go of Patrick Queen? Type C if you would cut him and save the extra $13+ million, or type K if you would keep him around and try to see if you can get that all-pro caliber player back out there on the field with a new defensive philosophy. All right, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors, brought to you here by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for stopping by here today. We're going to have a bunch of great content all throughout Super Bowl weekend. We've got a new mock draft coming out this weekend. We've got a mailbag. We got any updates on the coaching staff, which is really, turning into form here with Brian Angelico being hired as the new OC. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, guys. And until next time, here we go, Steelers.